请主持人王冠。
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our friends, a warm welcome to this special launch ceremony of Global Young Leaders Dialogue Program. My name is Wang Guan. I'm a news anchor and host at China Global Television Network, CGTN. It's so good to see all of you here today. 欢迎各位领导、各位来宾、各位大使、各位国际机构的代表光临我们今天的活动。今天呢，我们将共同见证一个特殊的而具有全球意义的项目的诞生。Now, Global Young Leaders Dialogue Program is a new and exciting project to bring together talented and dedicated young achievers from across industries and indeed around the world. This program is initiated by Center for China and Globalization and Academy of Contemporary China and World Studies. We want to thank United Nations China and Schwarzman College at Tsinghua University for their support of this program. 国际青年领袖对话项目为不同文化背景、不同国家、不同界别的优秀的青年领军者打造了一个平等对话交流的平台。这个项目呢是由全球化智库和当代中国与世界研究院共同发起，得到了联合国中国驻华机构与世界研究院与清华大学苏世民书院的支持。下面请允许我介绍一下来到今天现场的贵宾。Now please allow me to introduce some of the guests for today's program. They are 国务院新闻办副主任郭伟民，大家欢迎。中国外文局局长杜占元。Dr. Mariasa Olivella, Director of UNESCO Cluster Office in Beijing. Welcome. His Excellency Dominic Barton, Ambassador of Canada to China. Welcome, sir. His Excellency Mohammed Abd al-Sattar al-Badri, Ambassador of Egypt to China. His Excellency Luis Diego Monsalvi, Ambassador of Colombia to China. Welcome. 还有国务院参事、全球化智库创始人兼理事长、欧美同学会副会长王辉耀，国新办国际联络局副局长马佳，清华大学苏世民书院常务副院长潘庆忠，当代中国与世界研究院副院长孙明。全球化智库联合创始人兼秘书长苗绿。同时，我们还收到了很多国际组织、学界、商界的代表，他们也为今天的启动仪式呢发来了贺电和祝福的视频。Now we also have with us today lots of leaders from across industries, representatives of international organizations sending their best wishes for today's program. They include Interim United Nations Resident Coordinator in China, Madame Amakobe Sante, former Director General of World Trade Organization, Chair of Paris Peace Forum, Mr. Pascal Lamy, Vice Chairman at Munich Security Conference, Ambassador Boris Rug, President of Duke University, Vincent Price, World Bank Country Director for China, Korea, and Mongolia, Martin Razor, Asia Society Hong Kong Center Co-Chair, President of Hanlon Properties, Ronnie Chen, as well as Singapore's former ambassador to the United Nations, Kishore Mahbubani. I want to thank all of them for their participation. Now, first things first, we would like to invite our first speaker of the event. 下面我们想有请全球化智库理事长王辉耀先生为大会致辞。王会长，有请。
尊敬的郭伟民部长，尊敬的杜占元局长 ，and His Excellency Nicolas Chapus, Dr. Maria Olivia, and Her Excellency Mohammed Abi Safi Ibri, His Excellency Dominic Barton, His Excellency Luis Diego Monsalve, ladies and gentlemen, and young leader friends, and also our media friends. 大家下午好，欢迎大家出席国际青年领袖对话项目的启动仪式，一起见证这一由中国智库参与打造的青年领袖机制的正式发起。So good afternoon. Welcome to the Global Young Leaders Dialogue Program, launching ceremony to jointly witness the official launch of this Global Young Leader Dialogue Program initiated by the Chinese think tanks. The Center for China and Globalization has thought about launching a Young Leaders Program initiated and operated by Chinese think tanks, basically CCG and also Academy of Chinese Contemporary and World Studies, for a long time. As an international non-government think tank, CCG has actively engaged in track 2 diplomacy. When CCG participated in famous international forums, visited young leading international think tanks, we found that Young Leaders Program has been widely applied in forums and also think tanks. For example, the World Economic Forum announced its young leaders class every year. Outstanding Chinese young people such as Yao Ming and also John Liu were chosen as young global leaders by the WEF. The Munich Security Conference Young Leaders Program is also jointly initiated in 2009 by the Kobo Foundation and Munich Security Conference. It actually strictly selects 25 outstanding and young future decision makers who are under 40 years of age around the world every year and provides an international platform for them to communicate the progress. Actually, Dr. Mabel Miao, co-founder and Secretary General of CCG, had the privilege to be selected in the Munich Security Young Leaders Program this year. Another example is the Asia 21 Young Leaders Initiative of Asia Society, the influential education and cultural Asian policy research institution in the US and also around Asia Pacific region. The Asia Society actually announced Asia 21 Young Leaders class every year, and today's host, Wang Guan, the news anchor at the CGTN, was actually named of the Asia 21 Young Leaders. I was also hear from Dr. Oliva that UNESCO also have a biannual Young Leaders Program. So we're very pleased that China now has a Young Leader Program with a global focus. So why do those international forums and think tanks pay so much attention to young leaders? It is easy to view that young leaders groups have an increasing impact on various fields. The World Youth Report released by the United Nations Department of Economics and Social Affairs has actually stated that young people are the key to a sustainable, inclusive, and stable society. Young leaders are the future decision makers and guiders of international community. Therefore, the Young Leaders Program will effectively identify and cultivate young international talents with insights and a bold perspective. I think China is really the good time to start such a global-focused Young Leader Program. CCG is the only Chinese think tank that has been granted a special consultant status by the United Nations. We have been focusing on and promoting relevant issues, including globalization, global governance, and multilateralism for a long time. Therefore, when we designed this program, we thought about how to make it a unique and also globally renowned program for the young leaders around the world. After many discussions, we concluded that the core concept was to emphasize equal dialogue and also exchanges of ideas and to contribute to global issues. Because we know that, that despite the increasingly advanced communication technologies, global communication is still lacking among the countries, especially among young people also around the common challenges facing humanity. And there are not many opportunities for young people's in-depth dialogue, actually, with their peers in many other countries. Young people do have inclusive minds, stronger innovative energy, and more courage to think and also meet challenges. So we hope to provide such a public product for young global leaders so that more young leaders from different cultural and professional backgrounds can enhance mutual understanding and learning on the globalization, global governance, multilateralism, science and technology, and innovation, exchange of civilizations, sustainable and inclusive growth, health, and many other global issues to stimulate cooperation and innovation and cultivate a group of talents with global minds so as to create a better future for the humanity altogether. In the future, CCG and also the Academy of Contemporary Chinese and World Studies will actively leverage its strength as a social think tank to build a long-term mechanism for the Global Young Leaders Dialogue Program and to encourage and help young talents around the world to shine brighter in the clashes of ideas and create a new era of globalization through mutual exchange and learning from each other, and also through the dialogues. So thank you all very much for coming today, and really, this is a great event. Thank you all very much. 谢谢大家。
Thank you very much, President Wang. 谢谢王理事长非常详尽的介绍. Indeed, it's very gracious of you to mention the fact that I was one of the young leaders for a number of programs, including the one promoted by Asia Society. And I can tell you that these kind of dialogues are very, very important. A platform where you meet different, people from different countries and societies. I kept telling my fellow young leaders in Asia 21 program that before I met you guys, talked to you guys, the country that you represent were pinpoints on the map. But after talking to you guys, getting to know you guys, your countries became places in my heart. And I'm sure this program will do just that, really providing a great platform for people, for young leaders from across industries and around the world. Now, coming up next, we would like to invite someone who knows this program inside out, because she is the head of the Young Leaders Program, co-founder. She's also the co-founder and Secretary General of Center for China and Globalization, Ms. Miao Lu. Mabel Miao, please, the floor is yours. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Wang Guan, for introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is with my great honor and distinct pleasure to have Deputy Director of the Information Office of the State Council, Mr. Guo Weimin, President of China International Publishing Group, Mr. Du Zhanyuan, Canadian Ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Dominic Barton, European Union Ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Nicholas Chapins, Egyptian Ambassadors, His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Elambari, Colombia Ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Luis Diego Macev, senior diplomats from foreign embassies, representatives of international organizations and business circles, distinguished guests, and especially young leaders from various communities to be with us at this moment. Welcome to the Global Young Leaders Dialogue Program launch event. 女士们、先生们，大家好！非常欢迎各位来到我们的现场。我们的现场有非常多重要的嘉宾，刚才我用英文一一介绍了。当然，including our Miss Oliva from UNICEF, very welcome. Sorry, miss that. As we have shown earlier, our globalized world today is confronted by a number of challenges and problems that transcend national borders, not least the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, about 26% of the whole population is under 15 years of age. Needless to say, young people hold the key to a better future of humanity. Globally, young minds, ideas, and the voices of tomorrow are increasingly becoming a force to reckon with. Facing unprecedented challenges from geopolitical upheavals, environmental and public health crisis, and other global issues, the international community can benefit from an emerging generation of leaders keen on participating in global governance. Inspired by successful global youth leadership program, the Global Young Leaders Dialogue, GYLD, is designed to nurture the development of opinion leaders from diverse regions, sectors, disciplines, cultures, and professional backgrounds. GYLD aims to develop a dynamic community network with the vision and influence to drive positive cross-cultural dialogue and communication. Via open and extensive exchanges, we seek to bring together enterprising, globally minded men and women under the age of 45 to debate and formulate action plans, proposals, and innovative solutions to the world's most complex challenges. The GYLD embraces values such as internationalness, creativity, diversity, and inclusiveness in global affairs. The GYLD focuses on areas ranging from globalization, global governance, multilateralism, technology and innovation, dialogue among civilizations, sustainable and inclusive development, and public health. In the future, GYLD will develop programs including annual forums, workshops, seminars, symposiums, and joint research. Longer-term GYLD plans also include scholarships and grants, exchange programs, talent competition, and so on, where young leaders travel globally to meet their counterparts in person, of course, in post-pandemic times. If you take a look at our GYLD logo, you will see that the ripple merges in the collision and sublimates in the integration. Symbolizing the openness and inclusiveness GYLD embodies. Pink and blue imply youth and vitality, along with the resemblance of traditional Chinese mountains and rivers, which reflect greatness and pureness, implying the spirit of GYLD. Global young leaders today have never been so united, determined, and confident than ever before. Right here, right now, we embark on a journey to make young voices to be heard and ideas to be respected and effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary General Miao, for your speech. In fact, I think I skipped a video that our organizers prepared earlier. So I want to direct your attention, if I may, to the big screen to watch this video to really learn more about this program and what it means for young leaders from around the world, as well as a video about the logo that Secretary Miao has just mentioned of this Young Leaders Program. Please.
Just explodes. It's very, very terrifying.
This will not be the last pandemic. We should stress that stronger multilateralism and global cooperation can constitute a very solid foundation that will enable the international community to tackle current and future problems, no matter what they are.
That youth is mobilizing for global challenges and wants to play an active role in reshaping global cooperation.
If we think about the role of the young people, it will be very vital for them, together with the government, corporates, and civil society, to discuss, brainstorm, and come up with some revolutionary ideas on how to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, and at the same time continue the economy growing and having the prosperity of the people increased.
Innovations in policy, science and technology will be needed to mitigate climate change, but in itself this will not be enough. Societies will need to develop new ways to build and benefit from international engagement and multilateral cooperation. Trade and international exchange will need to adapt and then further fuel innovation. But young people can support this through their studies, their work, companies that they own, or in government.
I'm confident the young leaders today are already making a difference, but of course there's potential for much more. They can help raise the awareness about the need for us to have the solid foundation provided by multilateralism and collaboration.
Global Young Leader Dialogue is giving youth a chance to articulate their needs and exchange ideas to build back an improved post-COVID world.
Global Young Leader Dialogue is a unique opportunity for people from different backgrounds and different countries to come together and discuss those topics and come to some reasonable and meaningful solutions.
We believe the Global Young Leader Dialogue program is a very positive thing because it can help facilitate a mutual understanding between young leaders from different backgrounds.
The Global Young Leader Dialogue is a great opportunity for new insights about how we can harness the energy and the commitment of the global youth to make a real difference.
The Global Young Leader Dialogue will provide a platform for you to build bridges between East and West, to become a leader of tomorrow. Use your voice and use your actions. Join the ride.
I support Global Young Leader Dialogue.
I support the Global Young Leaders Dialogue.
I support Global Young Leaders Dialogue.
A firm supporter of the Global Young Leader Dialogue.
Sostengo il programma Dialogo Globale Giovane Rete.
Support Global Young Leader Dialogue.
Apoio o programa de diálogo global de líderes jovens.
I support Global Young Leader Dialogue.
Je soutiens la dialogue des jeunes talents globaux.
Friends, I don't know about you guys, I really like the creativity demonstrated by our artists in designing this project. 我们接下来呢要进入今天最激动人心的时刻了 The launch ceremony, the official launch of Young Global Leaders Dialogue. It will take a couple of minutes, but before we do, I am actually reminded, listening to President Wang, Secretary General Miao, and all of our guests speaking so far, I'm reminded of what Mahatma Gandhi once said. And he said this: no culture in this world can live if it attempts to be exclusive. I think it would be fair to say that the more accomplished achieving that we get, the more stereotypes we tend to have about people, places, ideas, and theories. But at this moment, I think it is, 谢谢大家，谢谢, thank you. I think it is particularly important for us, for all of us, to break these stereotypes and really to have more dialogues, more bridges, less walls. 那就像刚才我们说到的，国际青年领袖对话项目呢，将关注很多全球化的议题，因为确实有很多议题呢，在当今这个时代某一个国家是很难独自解决的。我们还关注联合国2030年可持续发展议程等全球化议题，多边主义全球治理，突出平等对话、思想交流、互融互鉴，培养一批胸怀世界的全球公民，携手共创全球化的美好未来。那么呢，接下来我们想有请今天参与启动仪式的各位嘉宾。Now I would like to invite our guests to the big stage for the official launch of the Global Young Leaders Program. They are 国务院新闻办副主任郭卫民， UNESCO Country Director in Beijing, Dr. Mariasa Olivella, His Excellency Mohammed Al-Badri, 中国文局局长杜占元，国务院参事全球化智库创始人兼理事长王辉耀 ，His Excellency Dominic Barton, His Excellency Luis Diego Monsalve, His 当代中国与世界研究院副院长孙明，全球化智库联合创始人兼秘书长苗绿，国新办国际联络局副局长马佳，苏世民书院常务副院长潘庆忠。好，我们请各位大使、各位贵宾、各位领导一同来到台前。哇哦，真的是非常激动人心的时刻啊 ！Very exciting and the newest addition to global cooperation and dialogue amongst the young folks. Some old friends over there. And also, 我们今天现场还请到了来自美国、加拿大、德国、法国、俄罗斯、澳大利亚、荷兰、哥伦比亚、阿根廷、格鲁吉亚、印度、阿塞拜疆、哈萨克斯坦，还有中国的青年代表他们也正在来到台上。他们在各个领域都为我们的全球交流和对话做出了杰出的贡献。今天呢，我们齐聚一堂，将共同见证青年领袖对话项目的诞生。All right, is everyone ready? OK. 那么呢，我想有请台下面的各位朋友、各位嘉宾一同和我倒计时，好不好？我们一同从5开始数，共同见证这个历史性的时刻。那之后呢，到数到1的时候，我们各位领导一同推动前面的这个长杆，好不好？我们一起倒计时，5、5、4、3、2、1, go! Congratulations! Let's give them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Now it is official. We do have the Global Young Leaders Dialogue Program. It is officially launched. 那国际青年领袖对话项目呢，到现在已经正式的诞生了。谢谢各位领导的参与，我们请各位领导稍稍留步，我们在台上合影，好不好？我们留下这个珍贵的历史的瞬间。也请后排的各位朋友let's take a family photo if you don't mind. Find your spot, your space. I want to make sure that absolutely everyone is seen in this photo. It's difficult, I know, but our organizers will try to make sure that each and every one of you is shown in our family photo.我们可以侧一侧身子我们可以稍微侧一侧。Yeah, let's all find our space. All right, thank you so much, and congratulations on our first group of young leaders elected to this program. Thank you, ambassadors. 那我们这次的国际青年领袖对话会呢，其实还得到了很多不同国家、不同领域的使节代表、国际组织的负责人、商界领袖、教育文化界领袖的关注和支持。因为疫情或者是公务等原因呢，他们没有机会来到现场，但是他们录制了视频来寄予本次活动。我也想请我们的工作人员播放一下我们各界领导还有各国使节、国际组织负责人的寄予视频。
Dear friends, on behalf of the United Nations in China, I wish to congratulate all of today's participants in the Global Young Leader Dialogue Program. I want to thank the Center for China and Globalization for hosting such a special event. Our shared vision for a brighter, more sustainable future is what brings us here together. At present, young people are confronted with a planet with many challenges. 2020, the 75th anniversary of the UN, has been a year of great disruption for the world due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This unprecedented global health crisis has had severe economic and social impacts on all sectors of society. Progress on poverty and inequality is threatened, with already vulnerable people facing the most serious consequences. All of this occurs amidst the worsening climate crisis and destruction of our natural environment. Achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals remains the blueprint on recovering better from the pandemic. With 10 years left to achieve the SDGs in this decade of action, young people around the world are answering the call. Young people are agents of change, proposing innovative solutions and driving social progress, all to make the world a better place. We must amplify your potential, and the UN in China and globally will continue to advance this cause for young people everywhere. This year, we have seen distrust and isolation grow in many countries, just when we need collective action. To emerge from the pandemic stronger and better equipped, we must discuss how we can build the future we want in global solidarity. In January, the UN launched the UN 75 Global Dialogues, asking people from all walks of life about their hopes and fears. These discussions have taken place in different settings, from boardrooms to classrooms, here in China and around the world. In our UN 75 Youth Dialogue series in China, we saw young people from across China bring meaningful ideas and suggestions to the table. Ideas to make society more accessible through technology for persons with disabilities. Ideas to make society more equal through gender equality in the workplace. In these 12 youth dialogues hosted by the UN in China, these ideas were seen by tens of millions of participants online. In the responses to UN 75, we, the people, have been clear. We agree on improving access to basic services, healthcare, water, education. We agree on building a more inclusive economy. We agree with the Secretary General when he states that making peace with nature is the defining task of the 21st century. Despite these challenges, it is your generation that remains and has to remain optimistic about the future. I ask the young leaders in the room to keep this spirit in all of your future endeavors. I wish you every success at today's event and call on your action to ensure we achieve the SDGs to build a better future for all. Thank you.
Let me first congratulate my good friends at the Center for China and Globalization for launching this new Global Young Leaders dialogues. At my advanced age, and having been lucky enough to have many different experiences in the international system, I know full well that the future we need to build cannot be built mainly by old people in old structures. Building is probably not the right word today. The right word today is probably to rebuild a world, a planet that has been very severely hit by this COVID-19 pandemic. In such a situation that we now have to cope with old problems that were not solved before the pandemic, and some of them maybe at the origin of the pandemic, and new problems which the pandemic has made more urgent, more dangerous, in need of more global cooperation at a time where strains, tensions, oppositions, conflicts are proliferating on this planet. Tough times, which is why we now need a new generation to engage in not only conversation, not only exchange of ideas, but also deeds, actions. And this is what we try and do with the Paris Peace Forum, which is another new form of addressing global problems, and which I have the privilege to chair. And I'm very grateful to the China Center for Globalization to be a partner of the Paris Peace Forum. And from the very beginning, my good friend Henry Wong decided to step into this new initiative, the characteristics of which is not that it addresses global problems. Lots of organizations, people do that, but we do it in a platform cooperative way, in engaging different stakeholders than usual suspects in the international system, countries, sovereign, diplomats, governments. Of course, we need them, but we also believe, and that's the specificity of the Paris Peace Forum, that we need businesses, we need non-governmental organizations, we need big academic institutions, we need cities, we need young people to step in order to address the problems we have, whether it's peace and security, and we know we have serious problems in this area, whether it's environment sustainability, at a time where global cooperation may be stronger following the US elections than during the mandate of Mr. Trump, social inclusion, digital rights, all these issues need to be relooked at after the COVID, hoping that this COVID world will come as soon as possible. So my message is very simple to young people like you. Please engage, please step in. We need you, not only for fresh ideas, and that's already very important, but also for the energy you can bring into moving things forward, whether with others or with the view you have personally with friends of what should be done. There is a short road to global governance, which is you, young people. We need you on board of fresh new global governance efforts. Thanks for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Boris Ruger. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Munich Security Conference, one of the most important security events in the world, and you can see a picture of our main conference hall right behind me. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to address you as part of the Global Young Leaders Dialogue of the Center for China and Globalization. The Munich Security Conference is a partner of CCG, and I'd like to thank Dr. Wang, the president of CCG, for this invitation. I have been a German diplomat since 1989. I've never served in China, but when I was a boy, my father spent 4 years in Beijing as a correspondent. And during that time, from 1973 to 1976, I visited China every summer. We traveled to many parts of the country, from Inner Mongolia in the north to Guangzhou in the south. I came to have great respect and affection for the Chinese people. Today I would like to congratulate CCG on creating a Young Leaders program. The Munich Security Conference has had such a program since 2009. It's been a great success, and we've had participants from China almost every year. Bringing the young generation together is an indispensable part of global dialogue. Many of the big international issues we face today can only be resolved by key global actors coming together. This is true with regard to climate change and with regard to the ongoing pandemic. We inhabit one world, and we must work together to survive, and I mean that literally. In 2019, France and Germany created the Alliance for Multilateralism to defend and strengthen the rules-based international order. Many countries have since joined this initiative. It's an example of how we can cooperate to tackle global challenges. From a German point of view, international law is the DNA of multilateralism, to use a phrase coined by our Foreign Minister Heiko Maas. Upholding international law and human rights is something we feel very strongly about in Germany. It's a lesson we have taken from the darkest chapters of our history. The China I knew as a boy no longer exists. It has undergone enormous, unprecedented development. Hundreds of millions of people have moved from poverty to prosperity in the space of just a few decades. China has become a leader in many areas. Today, China is a global power with influence reaching far beyond the Asia-Pacific region. With that power comes great responsibility. As a diplomat over the course of 3 decades, I have learned that empathy is an important part of our toolbox. By that I mean the ability to see things from the perspective of other actors. I don't mean adopting the position of the other side, but rather understanding where he or she is coming from. So Germans and Europeans, in my opinion, should work hard to understand what the world looks like from a Chinese point of view. By the same token, I think it's important for you to understand that certain policies pursued by China have given rise to concerns. To give you an example, let me quote a paper put forward 2 weeks ago by a group of eminent persons appointed by the Secretary General of NATO. And it reads, "While China does not pose an immediate military threat to the Euro-Atlantic area on the scale of Russia, it is expanding its military reach into the Atlantic, Mediterranean, and Arctic, deepening defense ties with Russia. NATO allies feel China's influence more and more in every domain." End quote. In early December, the EU said much the same thing, referring to the, quote, "strategic challenge presented by China's growing international assertiveness," end quote. Many of you viewing this event may disagree with those statements, but you should be aware that in Europe, China is seen not just as a partner, but also as a competitor and a rival, as an actor challenging fundamentals of our political and economic system. This is where, once again, dialogue comes into the picture. We have disagreements, some of them significant, but we must keep talking, and our young people in particular must keep talking. In that sense, let me once again congratulate CCG on today's event and on its new Young Leaders program. I wish you the best of success. Thank you for your attention.
Hello. As president of Duke University, I'm delighted to participate in this year's CCG conference, focused on the vital issues of global governance, global trade, public health, poverty, globalization, multilateralism, and other important issues. I'm particularly pleased to meet all of you, albeit virtually, as you represent some of the brightest and boldest thinkers in the Academy today. I only wish we could be together in person in China, a country I've had the honor and pleasure of visiting many times over the course of the past decades. As you may know, Duke's aspiration is to be a truly global university. We recognize that we're living in an increasingly interconnected world. And if we're to train the leaders for the future and make the discoveries that will improve lives, our perspective will have to be broader than our own backyard. Now, overall, this experience has been a tremendous success and promises to have an even brighter future in the decades to come. Nevertheless, you may not be surprised to hear this. There have been skeptics. Here in North Carolina and in my travels around the world, I still get the question, somewhat frequently, why did Duke come to China? A first answer to this question is simple: opportunity. Duke came to China because we saw tremendous opportunities for valuable research and business partnerships, and even more vital new avenues for cultural understanding. Above all, Duke came to China because our core commitments are to identifying and developing human talent for discovery in the service of human progress. We seek to empower the brightest minds to find solutions to the world's most pressing challenges. In the final analysis, what makes an institution of higher learning world-class is world-class people. And there are so many world-class thinkers here in China. People of diverse talents and diverse perspectives who come together, whose talents are combined and whose perspectives help generate new ideas, new modes of observing and understanding the world, new means of designing and building and teaching and healing. The early success of this effort demonstrates that we had good reason to be confident. China is the #2 economy in the world, with a broad and a deep pool of young talent, including all of you watching today. And we're so very excited to explore new opportunities for engagement in the years ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Martin Reiser. I'm the country director of the World Bank. It's really a privilege to have been asked to address this seminar of youth leaders of the Center for China and Globalization. And I'm very sad that because of a travel outside of Beijing, I'm not able to join you in person this afternoon. But I did want to share a few thoughts about this particular moment that the world finds itself in and the importance of multilateral collaboration. COVID-19 has brought home, if we needed reminding, how interconnected we all are, and how the world's problems today need global collaboration for a sustainable resolution. This is true most immediately in the public health response. It's also true, hopefully in the course of next year, in the purchase and the distribution of a vaccine so that we can finally get out of this pandemic. But it's also true as we look at the economic consequences of the pandemic in terms of the deep impacts on poverty that we see around the world, the impact on debt and debt sustainability in many of the poorest countries, and the need to build back better, to learn from the pandemic, to build a more sustainable future for our generation and the generation of our children. So this is really the challenge. And it seems to me that the crisis has revealed once more how none of these challenges can be resolved without global collaboration. And that includes conversations and dialogue, even between partners and stakeholders that may not agree on everything. One of the things that we have found as multilateral financial institutions is that sometimes countries that disagree with each other bilaterally can find ways to resolve differences on a multilateral platform by talking together. And so let me close by sharing an anecdote on how I got into multilateral development work. A friend of my father told me, he was a development specialist, he said, I've spent all of my working life trying to resolve the problems of development. I've made some successes, I've had many failures. Now it's time for the next generation to take over. And as I'm already well past the midpoint in my career, I say to you today, I look forward to the youth leaders of tomorrow to solve those development problems that my generation hasn't been able to solve. I hope that you'll get as excited and as rewarded by this work as I have been and as I will continue to be in my career. So with that, let me wish you a very successful seminar this afternoon, excellent discussions, and I hope to hear more from you as your own careers progress. Thank you very much for your attention.
I'm Ronnie Chan. I'm the co-chair of CCG. Welcome to the Global Young Leaders Dialogue. Your generation is living at a time when the global situation is greatly changed. My generation, the baby boomers, we lived under Cold War. That was pretty dangerous, but at least it was relatively stable. And since 1990, with the fall of the Soviet Union, we live in an age of Pax Americana that lasted perhaps 15 years. But now, whether you like it or not, it is ending. No one can cut down the Pax Americana. Only the United States itself can. How did they do it? Well, first of all, they cut down their own moral authority. They were fiscally irresponsible. And it is said that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We usually apply that to domestic situation, which is true. But in the last 30 years or so, we have seen it happen in the international arena as well. Before 1990, for 190 years, the United States was involved in something like 1.1 military conflicts per year. Since 1990, roughly, it has been engaged in 6.1 per year. Terrible. And then also, of course, as is always the case, the waning of any civilization is always coinciding with pride. And so, the pride that is exhibited in the last couple of years by the United States is truly amazing. Then finally, America decided to pick on a fight that neither side is going to win. No, it's impossible for either side to win, and that is it took on China in an unnecessary way, because China, as far as I can tell, is very happy to play second fiddle if necessary. So what are we facing? We're facing a totally fragmented world that will degenerate into chaos. It's going to be a messy situation. Finally, we are looking at COVID-19, pandemics. In the past, pandemics happened every 5 to 10 years, but now it's more like every year or two at most. In the old days, it's always regional, but today is international, global. And part of the reason is the rapid urbanization that we've been seeing everywhere in the world. Then you have 5 other global issues. I will not go into the details, suffice to say that number 1, technology. Technology has done a lot of good things, but it also creates a lot of moral issues. What about standard setting? What about technology-driven terrorism? The second global issue is financial crisis. In the past, it is only financial, but in 2008, it almost brought about an economic collapse. I believe the reason, fundamental reason, is that in the West, there is a wrong philosophy that to be bigger is better, to be faster is better, and to be freer is better. That's dangerous. They should learn from perhaps the Chinese, the way of the median, the middle way. The third global issue is the failure of multilateral international organizations, such as the ones started by the Bretton Woods. Those institutions are failing. Number 4, we're entering an age of reasoning receding, the receding of the age of reasoning. Many reasons, racial, religious, populism, degenerating democracy, and mental illness has been on the rise. Then finally, moral degradation. These are all serious issues that your generation have to face. So I hope that all of you will be able to keep a cool head. Sure, be passionate about good things, think boldly, think out of the box, but at the same time, don't get blindsided by the real situation that I have tried to describe to you. All I can say is I wish all of you in this young generation all the best, that hopefully you will be wiser than my generation, more responsible than my generation, that you will be able to pull the world up instead of my generation, which pull it down. All the best to you all.
Hello, my name is Kishore Mahbubani. I'm a distinguished fellow at the Asia Research Institute, National University of Singapore, and a former Singapore ambassador to the UN. It's my great pleasure to deliver a message to the Global Young Leaders program on the subject of poverty reduction, multilateral cooperation, and international trade. The three subjects are linked. Poverty reduction, it's actually quite amazing how successful humanity has been in reducing poverty. 200 years ago, over 90% of the world's population used to live in extreme poverty. Today, less than 10% do so. And why is that so? The answer is that poverty has been reduced because of international trade. Let me give you three examples. In China in 1992, China's total trade was $166 billion, and the percentage living in absolute poverty was 56.7%. But by 2018, China's total trade had risen to $4.6 trillion, a nearly 28 times increase, and its poverty came down to less than 0.5%. Similarly, Vietnam in 1992, its total trade came to US $5.1 billion, and the percentage of population living below poverty stood at 52%. But today, Vietnam's total trade has gone up to $527 billion, a 100 times increase, and at the same time, the population living below poverty declined 26 times to below 1.9%. Similarly, in India, India's total trade stood at US $45 billion in 1992, poverty rate 47.6%. By 2018, its total trade had risen to $940 billion, and poverty had fallen to below 7%. So the data is clear. Indeed, the former Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan, has said, trade is better than aid if we want to reduce poverty. But the next question is, how did we see such a massive increase in international trade? And the simple answer is that in 1945, after World War II, the world created a wonderful rules-based order based on the family of United Nations institutions. And indeed, the World Trade Organization is part of the UN family of institutions. So if any young person was to ask my advice on how we can create a better world, I would say that you don't have to reinvent the wheel at all. Just go back to the 1945 UN institutions and make them stronger. And indeed, when I was ambassador to the UN, I always said that the UN Charter that was published or created in 1945 is a truly beautiful document. And all young people should read this document to understand how wonderfully the United Nations was created and what sound principles it has. Sadly, many Western countries, especially the United States, have turned against the United Nations. And this is why I hope that the Eastern countries, especially Asian countries, which have benefited the most from global growth and especially growth in international trade, should become the leaders in strengthening multilateral institutions. This is why I want to wish your conference a great success. If young leaders in China could take the lead in strengthening global multilateral institutions, the world will be a much better place. Thank you very much. Very much.
好，我们送上我们的掌声，感谢各位领导，感谢可以说是前辈啊，借用拉米总干事的话说，就是感谢前浪哈，对我们后浪的寄语，还有指出的一些问题，比方说刚才在很多演讲当中呢，for example, Ambassador Rook talked about gaining empathy. Also, Vincent Price talked about, we need perspectives broader than those of our own backyard. Ronnie Chan talked about we're living in an age of reasoning receded. I think it would be fair to say that to solve all these questions, we needed more dialogue, not less. And hopefully this Global Young Leaders Program will do just that. 那这次我们的国际青年领袖对话会呢，还得到了很多领导、国际组织代表、驻华使节的支持和关注。那他们今天呢也来到了现场。那么下面呢，我们想首先有请国务院新闻办副主任郭卫民先生为我们发表讲话和寄语。郭部长，有请。
尊敬的各位嘉宾、各位使节、青年朋友们 ，Ladies, Gentlemen, Friends, Good afternoon。很高兴能参加这次活动，与各国青年一起交流。首先呢，我仅代表中国国务院新闻办公室，向国际青年领袖对话项目的启动表示热烈的祝贺。在即将过去的1年里，各种全球治理挑战层出不穷。新冠肺炎疫情严重冲击了人类卫生健康和减贫事业。但是，越是面临着挑战、危机，越能显现人类是一个命运共同体，也越能体现包容、团结合作它的重要力量。习近平主席指出，世界的未来属于年轻一代，全球青年有理想、有担当，人类就有希望。推进人类和平和发展的崇高事业，就有源源不断的强大的力量。我们欣喜地看到，中国的青年一代已扛起了时代的重任，展现昂扬的风采。在这次抗击新冠疫情的战斗中，有数万名青年的医护人员从全国各个地方驰援武汉，其中有很多是90后，甚至有00后。在中国脱贫攻坚的战役中，有很多的年轻的姑娘们、男孩们，他们工作在艰苦扶贫工作的第一线，为全面建成小康社会奉献青春。同时这些年轻人们也与各国的青年交流，分享在一线积累的知识和经验，践行着人类命运共同体的理念。不久前，中共19届5中全会全面规划了中国未来的发展蓝图。中国即将开启全面建设社会主义现代化国家的新征程。中国将坚持实施更大范围、更宽领域、更深层次的对外开放。中国的发展不仅为中国青年，也将为各国青年施展才华提供更多更大的舞台。国际青年领袖对话项目 是促进中外青年交流对话的一个很好的平台和窗口。刚才王辉耀理事长介绍了国际青年对话的理念，包括平等对话、共同包容、全球视野。苗吕秘书长也介绍了很多活动，我想这些活动都是很丰富也很有意义的。也希望我们借助这样的一个平台，展示风采，增进友谊，期待项目越办越好，让更多的国际青年才俊加入进来，交流进来。各位青年朋友们，青年人朝气蓬勃，希望大家用平等、尊重、包容的眼光看待世界，用欣赏、学习、共享的观点相互交流，推动不同文明的和谐共生、交流互鉴。中国国务院新闻办公室将一如既往地推动，为各国青年交流对话提供更多便利，创造更多条件。Thank you， 谢谢大家。
好，非常感谢郭卫民部长对本次对话的寄语和提出的希望。I think it would be fair to say that this dialogue is getting off to a very promising start. And up next, we'd like to invite President of China International Publishing Group 中国外文局局长杜占元先生上台发言，大家掌声欢迎。
尊敬的卫民主任，尊敬的联合国教科文组织驻华代表欧美琴女士，尊敬的欧盟驻华大使于白先生，尊敬的加拿大驻华大使鲍大明先生，尊敬的哥伦比亚驻华大使路易斯·蒙萨尔维先生，尊敬的埃及驻华大使穆罕默德·巴德里先生，女士们、先生们、朋友们，各位青年来宾，很高兴参加由全球化智库和当代中国与世界研究院联合发起的国际青年领袖对话项目启动仪式。首先，我谨代表中国外文局向参加论坛的各国青年朋友们表示热烈的欢迎，向国际青年领袖对话项目的启动表示热烈的祝贺。当前，全球新冠疫情仍在蔓延，世界百年未有之大变局正在加速演进，民粹主义、单边主义、保护主义对多边主义和全球治理造成冲击，全球范围内的贫困和结构性不平等呈上升态势，全球化面临的不确定、不稳定因素增加，迫切需要全球治理创新变革。青年是持续推进全球对话和多边合作的重要力量，是解决全球问题方案中最活跃、最生动的创新力量。面对日益增多的全球性问题挑战，今天的世界比以往任何时候都呼唤青年肩负起时代重任，解决全球治理赤字，推动更加公平、繁荣、多元的全球化。世界需要倾听青年的声音。国际青年领袖对话项目就是要搭建一个鼓励青年对话、促进青年交流、传播青年声音的国际平台。本届对话会将主要围绕减贫创新等全球可持续发展的重要议题开展广泛讨论，分享中国和世界各国在减贫领域的有益做法与经验，从青年的视角探索创新后疫情时代推进国际减贫事业的有效路径， 为应对人类共同挑战贡献青年的独特智慧。我们期待这一平台能够进一步激荡出全球青年的对话热情、思想火花和有力的声音。前不久，中国召开了19届中央5中全会，中国即将开启建设社会主义现代化国家的新征程，这也为我们国际青年的领袖的对话创造了更多更好的机遇。作为全球优秀青年的代表，青年领袖承担着引领和开创世界美好未来的重任。在这里，我愿与各位青年朋友分享几点思考。一是，青年要做知者，在了解世界旅程中秉持兼收并蓄的理念。世界文明是多样的，世界文化是多元的，青年是了解真实世界旅程的起步时期，只有兼容并蓄，才能看到世界各国的不同文明和文化之美。调查显示，海外18至35岁的青年群体，一直是各年龄阶段群体中对于中国的改革开放进步予以最多肯定的群体。这正体现了青年认识世界的开放包容的胸怀。当代青年生活在开放的世界、创新的文化和全球化的时代中，青年领袖应该带头摒弃狭隘的意识形态偏见、自私自利的保护主义思想、自以为是的单边主义理念，发出合作的声音，发出团结的声音，发出进步的声音，并树立开放视野和世界眼光，增强了解真实多元世界的自主判断力，更加关注全人类，特别是贫困人群等弱势群体的利益，提高应对全球性问题的本领。二是，青年要做仁者，在参与全球治理中抱有天下为公的胸怀。新冠疫情的全球肆虐，以特殊的方式告诉我们，没有任何一个国家是孤岛，人类是一个休戚与共的命运共同体。中国传统文化倡导的仁者爱人，就是彼此尊重、互敬互爱，从而实现互利共赢。西方文化也同样提倡平等、博爱，这些都为我们提供了启示和借鉴。面对当前在公共卫生、扶贫减贫、气候变化、环境污染等领域的全球性问题，青年领袖应当抱有以天下为己任的胸怀，从增进全人类共同福祉出发，积极参与全球治理，为应对全球性挑战建言献策，贡献智慧。三是，青年要做勇者，在应对国际挑战中弘扬敢为人先的精神。青年是最容易接受新思想、最富有创新创造活力的群体，应当对当前新的全球性挑战，青年领袖应当以敢为天下先的首创精神，破除传统思想定式影响，激发创新和变革活力，积极提出全球治理变革和解决世界性问题的新思路、新方法，为构建全球治理新秩序和人类命运共同体贡献 青年的智慧和荣耀。女士们、先生们、青年朋友们，世界的未来是属于青年人的，但建设美好世界需要一代接一代人的持续共同努力。希望各国青年领袖能够秉持欣赏、互鉴、共享的情怀来看待这个世界，登高望远，以思想之激荡、文化之交融、创新之活力，在全球治理、减贫发展和气候环境等领域广泛开展、深入研讨，为实现人类美好未来的目标贡献青春力量。最后，预祝国际青年领袖对话项目顺利实施，并取得圆满成功。谢谢大家。
好，感谢杜占元局长对我们大会还有青年领袖项目的寄语，还有提出的希望。的确，青年领袖4个字呢，既是一份光荣和荣耀，也是在肩膀上的沉甸甸的责任。So thank you very much, President Du. Now, up next, we'd like to invite Dr. Marielsa Olivella, Director of UNESCO Cluster Office in Beijing, to say a few words. Dr. Olivella, welcome.
Well, let me put my glasses like old people do. You know that protocol requires me to salute, the most important people in the room first. So since this is a dialogue for global young leaders, 大家好. Now, let me salute, Deputy Director Guo, Mr. Du, President Wang, S.J. Miao, and the ambassadors and all the experts and participants and guests here present. Thank you very much, for inviting me to speak at this Global Youth Leaders Dialogue promoted by CCG. It is such a special pleasure for me that I'm taking a day off for my annual leave to be here with you. I also have the special honor of bringing to you personal greetings from the UN Resident Coordinator, Amakomi Sandi, who met you and spoke to you over video. So, UNESCO believes in the power of youth to change the world. We don't consider that youth are the future. We don't feel the need to empower youth or to ask you, to become agents of change. Young people have already profoundly changed the world, are changing the world right now, and will continue to take this leadership role in the future to come. People magazine now have a 30 under 30 session. Forbes has a young billionaire session. Nobel Physics is won, mostly by people whose work was done when they were in their 20s. So let me just give you 4 simple examples of the most astounding transformations that young generations have already helped to create. Youth have changed the economy. 7 out of the current list of 10 largest corporations in the world by market value were created by young visionaries, several of which were not old enough to vote. Surveys show that college graduates want to start a business more than take a job. Of course, one of the reasons is that youth know that good-paying jobs and benefits are becoming scarcer and employment requirements more demanding, particularly for those with less experience. Opportunities for decent work are therefore the #1 concern for young people who are showing their resilience and entrepreneurial spirit by launching startups, cooperatives, incubators, and even creating completely new professions. Youth are major players in fast-growing culture and creative industries, which are one of the best sources of decent work nowadays. Another example, youth have changed the world's demographics. The median age of the global population is estimated nowadays to be 30.9 years in 2020, up from 26.3 years in just 2000. in part because younger generations are postponing getting married and having children until they can complete their education and earn a decent income. Opportunity for quality lifelong learning, including acquisition of soft skills needed to function well in a global knowledge society, technical and vocational education and training, and higher education is the second most important concern of young people. Young innovators are creating platforms that allow us to learn and to remain connected to our communities, including AI-powered translators that let us to overcome language barriers. A third example, youth have changed what and how societies consume. People below 25 years of age now represent 42% of the global population, so companies nowadays are tailoring product lines to young preferences. While supermarkets around the world sell 200 billion plastic bottles every year of water, young people's wellness and social consciousness is driving fast food chains to adopt recyclable packaging and bioorganic ingredients from sustainable sources. Scientists warn of the tremendous urgency in developing greener, more sustainable, less wasteful ways of life. And we already consume 50% more than our planet can regenerate in a given period. And the effects of climate change are truly fast becoming irreversible. Environmental degradation is among the top 5 issues concerning young people. But Greta and her generation peers are leading the way in climate action, demanding that world leaders, old world leaders, take immediate measures to address the looming climate disaster. A fourth and final example. Youth have changed urban landscapes. 55% of the global population now live in cities because young rural migrants got fed up with no opportunity being delivered through our neglect to rural development and moved. Around the world, every week, not now, maybe during the pandemic, but every week, 188,000 young professions form new single-person households. City planners are grappling with crowded urban spaces, but young innovators are working to make cities smarter, less polluted, more livable. Green, shared transportation replacing cars, reducing carbon emissions and traffic jams. Young architects are transforming decaying central areas into thriving cultural hubs and designing micro-housing and multi-purpose furniture that are comfortable and affordable. So yes, you've changed the world already, and we expect you to continue doing it. The United Nations and UNESCO is inspired by the real concerns of young people, such as decent work, education, the environment, inclusion, which are fully reflected in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals are based on the vision of leaving no one behind. They must be achieved for young people who are facing with courage and creativity the tremendous hardships imposed by global challenges, pandemic, climate change, dwindling labor markets, conflict, rising inequality, exclusion, and vulnerability. The 4 examples I shared clearly demonstrate how the decisions and choices made by young people matter, not just to them, but to all of societies. Younger generations see possibility and act to effect change on a global scale. Under the vision of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the entire United Nations is determined to open more and more spaces for youth dialogue and participation. This is how we build peace. We deliver fundamental social and economic justice that leaves no one behind and preserve the planet we share. So, if we can do all that, young people can do all that they have done through individual decisions, can you imagine your power, your capacity, what you can do by coming together deliberately in a platform for acting and dialogue? As the logo of this beautiful dialogue implies, it reminds me of water. You are like drops of water that need to come together, merge into mighty rivers, and wash away the challenges that we are facing today. This is why having a platform for global youth leaders to dialogue, to come together, is so important. So let me congratulate the Center for China and Globalization for convening it, and to reaffirm UNESCO's continued support to all initiatives that open real space for young people's decision-making and participation. And to you, young leaders, I hope to see you do what you do absolutely the very best: unleash creative destruction and reform, terraform this planet to a better one. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Olivella. Thank you for speaking so passionately about what young people are capable of. Trust me, you made us feel so good about ourselves. Next up, I understand that we have Ambassador Nicolas Chapuis, Ambassador of the European Union to China, joining us virtually. Is that correct? So, Ambassador Chapuis, the floor is yours.
下午好, good afternoon. Pleased to be with you today. Dear friends of CCG, globalization, you've heard it already, is under severe stress. And that is why this Global Young Leaders Dialogue initiative is much welcome. The European Union does not speak the language of decoupling. Its DNA is multilateralism, not as an abstract concept, but as the most effective framework to work out global solutions to global challenges. The EU thus speaks the language of interdependence, meaning common rules of engagement between nation states. Now, China's renaissance is the marking feature of our century. Its economic weight has reached the level above the US and the EU economy. How the three top world economies are going to interact while keeping climate change at bay and driving the digital revolution in an ethical way should be at the forefront of your strategic thinking. There is, however, no guarantee whatsoever that this interaction may be smooth or positive. Hence, young leaders need to come up with new ideas on how to bridge the divides of today between the US, the EU, and China, among others. And I would like them to speak to each other and not speak past each other. Time has come to acknowledge that China's development is less a threat than a historic opportunity on our common road to global security and prosperity. Prejudices must stay at home, for we need open minds, innovative thinking, and genuine dialogue without predefined conclusions. The European Union stands ready to work alongside the CCG in that direction. Now, I measure the obstacles and the difficulties, but I have faith in the ability of young Chinese scholars and business leaders to foster meaningful exchanges with their EU, US, and other nationalities counterparts. The European Union is striving every day to forge a positive agenda in its relationship with China. And I note with a lot of interest that all your speakers before me this afternoon have shared this stand. Now, the priority objective is to ensure that China feels more comfortable than it does today in the international order, which means that mutual understanding and mutual trust should overcome various suspicions or threats. And I hope that the Global Young Leaders Dialogue will do just that. So please accept my best wishes and Happy New Year as we prepare to leave 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chapuis, 欧盟驻华大使玉白先生。感谢您在这个下午通过视频的方式加入我们今天的讨论和会议。Thank you very much, Ambassador Chapuis. Up next, we'd like to invite Ambassador Dominic Barton, Ambassador of Canada to China, to say a few words. Ambassador Barton, welcome.
Distinguished guests, fellow ambassadors, and particularly for the young leaders, welcome. It's an honor to be here today. Daja Xiaowu Hao. What I'd like to focus on for the next few minutes is talking about what leadership is. I think we've had wonderful overviews of the need for leadership, given all the changes that are going on in the world. And I may draw on my previous experiences when I was in the business world, and I had a rule which was to meet 2 leaders a day. I did that for 9 years while I was the CEO of my organization. And those leaders were in the public sector, the private sector, and the social sector. And today I try and continue that as well, because there are many leaders here amongst us. And what I would ask those leaders is 2 questions, 2 sets of questions. One is, what are the 3 things that excite you the most? And then the most important question was, what would you teach your younger self? What would you teach your 21-year-old self if you could do it again? And that's the basis of what I would like to cover. Because there is a very big difference between management and leadership. Leadership means that you push the boundaries, you challenge the orthodoxies, you get people to follow a direction, and it means that you're going to be doing some uncomfortable things to be able to make things differently. And when I think about the 3 things that I heard leaders most often talk about when they were reflecting on themselves as younger people, it all related to people. They would have removed people faster in their organizations than they did. It doesn't sound like a very nice thing to say, but that they would remove people faster. They would have brought younger people up faster into the organization, and they would have spent more time with people, because people is where it happens. You cannot be a leader if you don't have people and followers that want to work with you. And then if I try and unpack what it means to spend time with people and what you focus on, there's a further 3 things, and I'm going to shut up on it. And those 3 things are really around habits, experiences, and apprenticeship. And I think, at least from what I've found, because I'm a student of leadership, when I look at leaders, is they typically have a set of clear habits, an operating model in terms of how to get things done. And these are very basic, but many of us forget them. And they come down to things like, do you plan your week ahead? And do you plan your week not in terms of looking at your calendar, but looking at your agenda? What is it that you are trying to get done in your organization over the next 5 years? If you have more than 5, that's probably too many. But what is it you're trying to get done, and how does the following set of activities in the week fit that? Because for most leaders, they can get drowned in issues and activities, and then there's no time to drive it forward. So thinking about your operating model, how you organize yourself for the week, how you get time for yourself to be able to think and reflect and move as opposed to just react, is a critical element of effective leadership. Related to that is, frankly, being an interesting person. Most of the most impressive leaders I've met are actually interesting people. They don't work all the time. They're involved in their community. They have hobbies. They're interesting. If all you do is work, you're not going to be very interesting, and people are not going to want to work with you and as you drive things through. Thinking about your ability to manage your energy. I think when you're a leader, it's not about time management, it's about energy management. There's just never enough time. So thinking about, in the course of the week, are there things that are giving you a source of energy, and what is draining you on the energy side, but thinking about your energy and fitness. So there's a lot to do with the operating model of how one works as a leader. When I think about experiences, those leaders that have grown the fastest typically is because they've had multiple different leadership experiences. And that's important. You don't all of a sudden become a leader overnight. You do not become a leader when you're appointed CEO or leader of your organization. You're building that up all the way through. And so looking for experiences where you can actually take something, own it, and be able to deliver working with other people, no matter how small it is critical in what you're doing. Getting international experience is fundamental. From a personal point of view, I learned the most whenever I moved somewhere. And my mentors, and I'm going to come to this at the very end, on apprenticeship, were mainly Asian leaders, Korean bankers, Korean government leaders, Shanghai mayors, party secretaries, Singaporean leaders. These are people that when you work with them, you're going to learn a whole different view of how they see the world and how it works. And getting those international experiences as early as possible is critical. So all I want to say is that leadership is critical. We've seen it from the previous conversations. How you do leadership is a pretty fundamental challenge, and I think I would urge all of us to study that so that we can all be the most effective leaders that we can be. And I want to say a special thank you to CCG, to you, Henry, and you, Mabel, for establishing this forum. That in itself is an act of leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Barton, for sharing with us your personal reflections on what leadership entails and how really to be an effective leader. Now, coming up next, we'd like to invite Ambassador Mohammed Abd al-Sattar al-Badri, Ambassador of Egypt to China. 下面我们有请埃及驻华大使穆罕默德·巴德里先生上台致辞。Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you very much, distinguished hosts, Honorable Guo Min and Honorable Du Zhanyuan, distinguished President of CCG, distinguished ambassadors, colleague of mine, dear youth and representatives of youth, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend my deepest congratulations to CCG for organizing this event. It is very important. It is a very important initiative that I think we all have to embrace in the days and months to come. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be very honest with you. History was not kind to women and youth. This is a fact. 7,000 years into existence, and these two have suffered tremendously, even though the writing on the wall said differently. I can give you examples. William Pitt Jr., brilliant politician in the United Kingdom. Alexander the Great, he conquered the world before reaching the age of 30. Napoleon Bonaparte. But let me, because I'm the Egyptian ambassador, I would like to stick to my own history. Perhaps the most important king and pharaoh we ever had was Ahmose I. Ahmose I assumed the kingdom at the age of 10 years, when Egypt, the northern part of Egypt, the delta, was occupied for 200 or more than 200 years by the Hyksos. And before he was 20 years old, he reorganized the army, threw out the Hyksos from Egypt and started reforming Egypt. He was a young boy, but he did it. Why? Because he was a leader. So the writing was all over the wall, but our ancestors refused to accept it, ladies and gentlemen. This notion is changing. It has been changing ever since the Second World War. It started with gender equality, and the process was launched. And then youth and the empowerment of youth. So I think that your generation of youth are very lucky because you are at a certain juncture in history where youth is becoming the epicenter among gender equality. So you have a better luck as a generation than those who preceded you for 7 millennia. Now, as the Egyptian ambassador, we came out from Egypt. We came from two revolutions, until we were able to restitute democracy once again. And our President Abdel Fattah Sisi, focused very much on these two issues, and in particular on the issues of youth. Why? From the age of 15 to the age of 32, this cluster of the population represent nearly 40% of the Egyptian society. 40%, ladies and gentlemen. This is a number that you have to take very seriously. And therefore, we started a very rigorous program on the issue of youth empowerment. We started two main programs. The first program was the Presidential Leadership Program, and the second was the World Youth Forum. Now, the first program, what does it do? It's a one-year program that targets young leaders and give them the sufficient training, the sufficient exposure, the different modules for them to learn from, incorporate them into the government structure, prepare them, get them ready to aspire to achieve what they want to achieve. And it was a very, very successful program. Thousands of them have already graduated from this. And they are taking their place in the government and other structures of the governance of Egypt as a whole. Young leaders are targeted and given and empowered by knowledge, by training, by experience. And all of this is undertaken under the direct supervision of President Abdel Fattah Sisi himself. The second is the World Youth Forum. Upon my return from my post as ambassador to Moscow in 2017, I attended this forum in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it was a very magnificent sight. Ladies and gentlemen, we were having close to 300-400 youths from all over the world coming together, talking, exchanging, expanding their horizon, expanding the vision. Why? Because exactly like the previous speakers said, the only way in order to get them ready to assume the leadership they want is you have to expose them. You have to expose them to the different culture. The worst thing is to become ethnocentric or cultural-centric and become imprisoned by your own visions. This is going to get you nowhere. In a globalized world, this is not the right thing. And I have seen the youth, 300-400 of them, sitting, discussing, talking in every aspect that all the distinguished speakers before me talked about. Culture, politics, economics, doing business, developing visions, seeing how we can come, how diversity can create more opportunity and more unity amongst all of us. So I know what it's like, and my president was in the midst. And I remember when we ended when just on the ending ceremony, the 300-400 ran immediately. They broke all the security protocols and everything, and they ran over the president and they wanted to take a selfie with him. And it was very important, not only for them, but it was important for the Egyptian leadership to get the feel of the young generations, to get their visions, to understand their aspirations. Therefore, if you would permit me, distinguished guests, I would like to extend an invitation to CCG to link up with our two initiatives. We have quite an experience in this. We have been working on these for the last 6 years, and we have struck major success in this, in bridging the age gap and learning from the different initiatives that we have worldwide. So I am inviting you, please, we would like to coordinate with you as an embassy and starting to establish the link. And the more we communicate together on the bilateral, and more than a bilateral, a multilateral fora, the better we will become. Ladies and gentlemen, nobody improves by himself. That is a big fallacy. So I would like to thank CCG for their initiative. I would like to thank you all for this. And believe me, the last words I would like to say for our young leaders present here is that you are way more lucky. Your generation is much luckier than our generations. So make use of it, because you have this opportunity. And if you get an opportunity and you don't use it, that is a huge mistake. Inflicting upon yourselves before you're not inflicting this on anybody else. This mistake, the consequences are inflicted on yourselves. So use this opportunity, use this initiative, use our initiative in Egypt, our presidential initiatives in the World Youth Forum, and let's make something better for the youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Al-Badri, for your heartfelt remarks. We've heard you loud and clear. Thank you. And up next, we'd like to invite Ambassador Luis Diego Monsalve, Ambassador of Colombia to China. 下面我们欢迎哥伦比亚驻华大使路易斯·迭戈·蒙萨尔维先生上台致辞。
Thank you, my friend Wang Gang for presentation. Distinguished Deputy Director Guo, dear colleagues and speakers, dear Henry, dear Mabel, Nushimin, Shenshin, Panyumen, Shabuhao. First of all, allow me to express my gratitude to CGG team for this invitation to participate in this important event, and of course, for the outstanding role that it plays in enriching the debate on the most important global issues. CCG, congratulations. Today, it is an honor to be sharing with you my thoughts regarding the launching of the CCG new program, Global Young Leaders Dialogue, which will definitely create a comprehensive platform to understand and enhance the cooperation in globalization and global governance based on a multicultural and multidisciplinary approach. Young leaders are not the future anymore. Each day they embody the present, and accordingly, their voice needs to be heard. They have been demonstrating their leadership capacity worldwide, where you can find nowadays many of the most influential leaders to be under 45. For instance, President of Colombia, Iván Duque, who is 44, is one of those young leaders who is transforming the realities of our people, overcoming these challenging and turbulent moments. Since his inauguration, his government has been devoted to young people and the transformation of our society. As an example, the average of more than 30 deputy ministers is 37 years old, and of the ministers, the youngest is around 33 years old. Colombia is a young society in which 73% is under 45, where most of them are committed with entrepreneurship, creativity, innovation, tech-oriented, looking for development and progress. In this framework, one of the flagship programs of President Duque is the Orange Economy, that represents 3.4% of the total GDP. And the principle of his government, legality, entrepreneurship, and equity over a solid base of sustainability and innovation, embrace this new concept in which young people are in the core. His ambitious plans is that we can understand that the success of our economy consists of investing in the talent of our citizens and taking advantage of the entrepreneurial potential of the country's youth in the context of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. However, this is not exclusive of Colombia, of course. Instead, it's a trend in which the world is embracing new ideas and realities that will define the future. 2020 is the proof and breaking point of what we are discussing today. The nature and our planet shook up our system and advises us of a need of change. Nowadays, we are all wondering how the world will be like in the post-pandemic era. COVID-19 is more than a health crisis and is restructuring our knowledge and understanding of everything. It is actually renewing the world economic and social order in an unprecedented way, creating new challenges for humanity. How the world is reaching and facing this crisis, and how young people view, think, and respond to global issues and challenges will determine the face of the future world. In this context, please let me talk to the young leaders and to the world about my views of how we need to work jointly on this matter, and I hope, of course, this will be useful for the Global Young Leaders Dialogue. First, governments, advisors, academy, companies, and international organizations should be conscious of the need of empowering young people. This means to allow them to use their talent to be agents of change and let them be part of the discussions of the major worldwide challenges in decision-making positions, including the formulation and implementation of public policies. Second, to identify together with young people the major issues we need to face as humankind. For example, climate change, inequality, sustainable development, universal access to education, among others, in order to define common strategies, because they need to begin exercising their leadership in the present to do it in the future. And finally, last but not least, there is no one more capable than young leaders who were born and raised in this era to understand the technological revolution. They should be in the core of the entrepreneurship and innovation programs to generate new solutions to the upcoming challenges. As I mentioned, young leaders are the present too, and we should rise on the occasion. It is in our hands as leaders to be up to the task and to meet the difficult challenge to ensuring a smooth transition for them. Thank you very much. 谢谢.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Monsalve, for taking time off to join us and for your wishes for the young leaders. Thanks so much, much appreciated. 下面我们有请苏世民书院常务副院长潘庆忠院长上台致辞，大家欢迎。
各位嘉宾，各位年轻的朋友们，大家下午好。这个先祝贺我们 CCG 领头做了这一个非常非常有意义的这个项目。我们刚才郭卫民部长讲到了美好的开端，坚持把它做下去，一定会做出好的成绩来的。这个大家知道，每个人都年轻过。这个我站到这儿之后呢，我就想到30多年前有一首歌，在中国呢非常流行，脍炙人口，一直流行到今天。这个歌呢就叫《年轻的朋友，大家来相会》。这歌呢说的是年轻的朋友来相会，荡起小船儿，暖风轻轻吹，花儿香，鸟儿醉，春光惹人醉。很长。今天呢，这个鸟儿还是一样的鸣，这花儿还是一样的香，但是世界变化了。今天的世界跟30年前确实不一样了。当时这个歌是唱给中国的年轻人听的，说新一代、新一辈的年轻人。但是今天 这个歌是应该唱给全世界人听的，全世界的年轻的人听的。为什么？因为我们面临着挑战，远远超过了20年前、30年前，甚至人类历史上任何一个时候。所以，我们有这样一个年轻的国际青年对话，可以使我们的年轻人聚在一起，能够多交流。我举一个例子，我们就要交流。清华大学呢有一个这个项目，这个项目呢是跟我们南美国家的结合。大家知道，离北京最远的首都是哪儿？是智利的首都圣地亚哥。这必须得坐30多个小时以上的飞机。这个伊隆马斯克发明他这火箭之前，我们都得坐正常的飞机，必须30个小时以上。但是从2005年开始，我们的学生每年都去智利，智利的学生每年都来清华。这样的项目我们有很多，那么遥远，每个学生都是没有去过智利的，每个学生从智利也都没有来过中国的。但是10几年过去之后，他们都结成了朋友，都成为了互相理解的、互相友好的、永远的伙伴。这个就是交流的作用。我们苏志民书院也是这样的一个项目，提供一个平台，跟 CCG 我们一起能够支持全世界的年轻的朋友们来相会，互相了解，互相理解，互相学习。就像这个歌里唱的一样，未来20年我们再相会，伟大的祖国更美好，这是伟大的世界会更美好，我们一起努力。谢谢大家。
非常感谢潘庆忠院长精彩致辞啊！每次听潘院长在台上发言，都感觉非常的有趣，而且非常的激情澎湃啊，受益匪浅。谢谢潘院长。那我想今天既然是国际青年领袖对话项目，我们要不要听几个青年领袖的发言呢？Now, we would like to introduce 3 young leaders. Now that we're talking about Global Young Leaders Dialogue, I think it will be essential to hear from the young leaders. 谢其润是中国生物制药有限公司董事会主席，正大制药集团董事长。虽然很年轻啊，但已经是上市公司的领导者，曾经被福布斯中国评为中国最杰出商业女性称号。Now, I would like to introduce our first young leader of the day to address this seminar, Teresa Xie. She is the chairwoman of Board Committee of Sino Biopharmaceutical. She studied at Wharton and was recognized as the 100 most successful businesswomen in China by Forbes. Teresa, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am so honored to be speaking here today among such inspirational and distinguished individuals. The Global Young Leaders Dialogue is an incredible forum that unites young leaders from all across the world to share ideas, to learn from each other, and to make our mutual dreams a reality. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share with you all and to learn with you all. Thank you, CCG. My name is Teresa, and I was fortunate enough to grow up a global citizen. I attended primary school in Beijing, middle school in Hong Kong, and university in Philadelphia in the United States. My global upbringing has given me a very global perspective with a firm Chinese roots. Due to my family's background in healthcare, I have always been very passionate about public health issues. Public health is one of the most important, if not the most important issue in the globe today. Today, we are still battling with the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has brought major economies to a grinding halt, caused global dislocation, sparked social unrest, and forced some countries to the brink of collapse. And as the pandemic rages on, we as individuals are faced with quarantine, endless video calls, the feeling of isolation, and this pandemic has underscored the importance of us cherishing our communities and playing our roles in our communities. Like many of you and your families, my family and I had continuously fought against this pandemic to the best of our ability. At the onset of the pandemic in February, our company has donated over 10 million worth of medical equipment and funding to Chinese Academy of Medical Science. And after that, we launched a series of ongoing campaigns to donate funds, medical supplies, medicine, and food to doctors and nurses. We also sent over 1 million surgical masks to 7 different countries. Through my role at our company, I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to speak directly to patients who need access to affordable health care, to doctors who want to solve clinical unmet needs, and with scientists who want to find breakthrough therapies. We all continue to do our part as a global citizen and give back to our global community. We are not now at the end of this dark tunnel. COVID vaccines are becoming available in some countries, and this is an extraordinary and unprecedented achievement for us to discover a deadly new virus and create a tested vaccine in less than a year. And this could not have been accomplished without global communities working together. Vaccines are a result of working together. Vaccines continue to inspire us to work together, and viruses have helped forge partnerships and collaborations across borders despite our differences. Our company has also invested heavily in vaccines, aiming to make it more accessible to all global citizens, to deliver vaccines to developing countries in need. As vaccines become a reality, we can work together to overcome economic difficulties, restart cross-border trade, and promote cross-culture exchanges. We are back on track to develop a thriving global community. This is a great example of how innovation and globalization are important pillars of a better tomorrow. As young global leaders, we will continue to innovate to create true value for our society, no matter what industry we are in, to tackle global issues with sustainable development. In the past 20 years, we have grown and achieved so much, but there is still so much more that we can do in the next 20 years and the 20 years after that. With the guidance and support of everyone here today, together I believe we can truly make a change. And lastly, I wish this forum a big success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for congratulations, rather, on what you have accomplished and for all that you have done during COVID. Thank you so much. Congratulations. 下面我们想向大家介绍第2位青年领袖啊，他的中文名字叫范诺亚，加中贸易协会董事会主席。协会的业务呢，包括中国以及中国和加拿大有关的战略咨询服务。Noah Fraser is Managing Director at Canada-China Business Council, the de facto chamber of commerce between Canada and China. 范诺亚呢获得了渥太华大学、香港中文大学、南京师范大学等多所国际知名大学的学历和学位，曾经有超过15年的国际职业发展经历，为提高全球跨领域合作做出了贡献。Noah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Wang Zong. Well, good afternoon, everyone, young leaders and officials. Firstly, allow me to thank Henry and Mabel and the CCG team for inviting me to speak here today. When I was invited as a young representative, I had to double check to ensure that I actually qualify based on my age and rapidly graying hair. Apparently, the new standard for young is under 40, which is great, so I've got a couple of years to go as a young guy. I'm not going to speak for long today. I just want to make a couple of key points. But first, again, my congratulations to the CCG and their partner organizations, especially my friends at the Schwarzman Scholars Program, on the launch of this excellent initiative that I hope will bring together more and more young voices on China and its increasingly central position in the global discussion. There is no forward-thinking CEO today of any major multinational in the world that does not pay attention to China. One of our most respected mining and energy executives in Canada is famous for carrying around a copy of the latest 5-year plan in his breast pocket. Whether from a perspective of supply chain, consumer market access, security and militarization, climate change, human rights, China is a vital element of any material discussion on the future of the world, and who is that future more relevant to than the youth of today? As was mentioned earlier, I run the China market for the Canada-China Business Council. It's a 42-year-old nonprofit. We're a membership-based association that represents about 350 firms that are active in China. You'll forgive me a little bit if I fly the Canadian flag in my remarks a bit, but I think the ideas are broadly applicable. When I speak to my corporate members, I want to point out a few things that are always consistent. Number one, generally the senior leaders of these companies are old white guys that have been coming to China for 30 years, but if they landed here on their own tomorrow, they could probably not order a coffee or hail a cab. And they're the first to admit that. So China has changed, it continues to change, and it changes at a pace so rapid that they know they need to be training and developing a talent that is engaged with the China of today and will be able to keep up with the China of 2 weeks or 2 months from now. Young people are critical to further success here, thereby long-term shareholder value and dividend yield. They are looking for solutions to drive and maintain young talent in both markets and develop the leaders of tomorrow. Number two, our companies have never been more concerned with ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues, especially when it comes to China. China was once, not so long ago, a bit of a dark cloud on the face of the global climate fight. And now its leaders are making incredible commitments to clean air, reforestation, soil remediation, solar and wind energy, NEVs, the list goes on and on, but all with accountable timetables, which is critical. There is still a lot of work to be done. I firmly believe this is one of the areas where Canada and China will have the most synergies in the years to come. Especially in the sphere of new energy vehicles. Our government recently announced a ton of funding for these things, so I hope to see some Chinese NEVs on the streets of Toronto in the near future. Furthermore, Canadian companies are keenly concerned about working conditions, social audits, human rights in geographical areas beyond their scope. And young people, as made evident in the protests around the globe over the last couple of years, are extremely sensitive to these issues. And China and the world will have to continue to do more to ensure that human rights and the environment are protected. Social media and technology will make it more and more important for companies and governments to be transparent and ethical in the future. Number three, cultural integration is now more important than ever. For decades, we have had Chinese students arriving in Canada in droves to attend classes at the University of British Columbia, Toronto, Alberta, dozens more, and this goes for schools across the US and Europe as well. But far too few international students are landing in China. When I arrived in Nanjing in 2005 as a young English teacher and enrolled at the Nanjing Normal University, I was one of less than 10 students from across a 4-year program that were from North America or Europe, which was a pretty sad state of affairs in a major city. So what can we do together, and dialogues like this are a platform for that, to increase the appeal and ease of studying in China, to build mutual understanding, to deepen critical people-to-people ties, and longer-term trans-Pacific corporate cooperation? I hope that dialogues like this will focus on this issue because corporations in Canada and beyond are seeking solutions to narrow this gap. Secondly, and related, I want to mention the idea of charity and giving in China as it relates to youth. I sit on the board of a Canadian charity called Educating Girls of Rural China. Some of you may know it. It's called EGRC. And it works to help young women in Western China escape the cycle of poverty through access to education. It is a very difficult operation to run due to current rules surrounding foreign charities operating in China. I believe that young people in China and beyond would like to see more, be more involved, and have more access to opening their own initiatives like this. So I would strongly recommend a review of the policies that dictate charity work in China. It is a sector here that has gone through many challenges over the years, but I believe it is poised for rejuvenation with a young diaspora of well-educated professionals with increasingly high incomes that want to see a rising tide lift all boats. My last point, as it relates to youth in China and globally, is a message to my own generation in China and younger. Many of you will have heard the question, is China going to get old before it gets rich? By 2050, 330 million Chinese will be over the age of 65. Adjusting the one-child policy arguably came too late, as people were too well educated by the time of the revision and are no longer keen to have more children than one or two. That means that in a few short years, there will only be 2 working adults supporting each individual senior citizen. With advances in modern medicine, as we see every day in China, as well as your propensity for long life expectancy, The youth of today need to mobilize now to ensure that they are not crippled by a rapidly aging country. This means supporting ideas like increasing retirement age. It means increasing contributions to social welfare funds and investing in sovereign wealth funds, and better quality elderly care systems and more. These are areas that I believe Canada and China have a lot of synergies, along with all the other countries represented in the room, and should clearly collaborate closely on. Demographics is an issue of the future for the youth of today, because just like me, China is getting gray very quickly, and time to worry about that is now and not in 30 years. But in any case, thank you all very much for listening, and to CCG for putting together this platform. Wishing you all the very best with the Global Young Leaders Dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah, for putting forward really those actionable items for this Global Young Leaders Program. It's great to have you with us as a young representative. And our third and final young leader who will speak with us today 是一位中国通啊，他有一个中国的名字叫谭家旭啊，投身公益慈善事业，跨越国界，为残障群体在生活和就业方面提供各种机会，在助力联合国可持续发展2030目标上做出了很多的工作，为不同阶层、不同背景、不同需求的人们谋求健康与福祉。Joshua Dominic, the handsome young man over there, founder and organizer of Cranking Through China. He has dedicated himself to social issues, specifically helping people with disabilities in China experience sports and the outdoors. Joshua, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank everyone for bearing with us today. I am the last speaker, and this is a kind of a big responsibility. I'd like to thank Henry and Mabel for the opportunity to come here today, Deputy Guo and President Wang for all of this opportunity, along with our ambassadors and other guests. I want to make this a relatively personal closing. China has been a part of my life for the past 20 years. I first arrived in 1998, and I feel that it's too much to say I've given my youth to China, but I feel like my youth was influenced and formed by China. I first came to China in 1998 as a study abroad student at Peking University, learning Chinese, taking that experience, and somehow China just became a part of me. I remember back in 1998 witnessing the changes, the differences in China. There was no third ring road. There were a lot of things that were different, that were unfamiliar to me. Not as many Starbucks, not as many McDonald's, things that I knew back home, and it really changed how I looked at the world. I grew up in a small town in New York State, 2,000 people. Moving to a city of 20 million was a big change for me. In terms of the physical environment, I remember going from Peking University to the center of the city in 2 hours on a bus. Now any distance can be covered in an hour on one of the biggest subway systems in the world. It's very impressive. Socially, China has come such a long way. There are different issues that have come up, and young people are driving change in that area. I also respect China for its vision of the future. I really feel that China has a very well-formed vision of where it wants to go and how it wants to interact with the world, which is inclusive and engaging. This has inspired me personally because I look at the world and my environment in a very personal way. When I see the people around me, I feel that I can influence them, I can do something, and this came to me at a very young age. China and the world and globalization, I think the world today is changing a lot. China is constantly changing, and this change I have seen over the past 20 years. I really think that China is open to change. It gives change a chance, whereas a lot of established economies, established countries are kind of set in their ways. And it's this element that inspired me to really engage in different aspects of Chinese culture, Chinese social issues, and make it a part of my life personally. Going forward, I think China will influence the rest of the world. It'll influence the US, it'll influence many countries around the world, and as was said before, bring about a new vision for the world, a new vision for how we do things together. Personally, I have engaged, as Wang Guan said, with disabled groups in China. In 2013, I would say, lucky enough to get to know an American friend who was a disabled athlete, and we had the idea to bring disabled sports to China. Give people an opportunity that didn't have the opportunity to come out, engage with communities, engage with the greater, wider society, and basically find an opportunity to express themselves and expand their horizons. I think that Mr. Du said it very well. 知者仁者勇者. These three elements, I think, are not unique to young people, but very important elements of youth. To know, to have compassion, and to be brave enough to move forward. Allow young people to actually take on new challenges and deal with issues that maybe aren't as important to other people or maybe not as central to traditional values. In terms of my personal experience with disabled sports and adaptive sports, my organization called Cranking Through China focuses on hand cycling and anything to do with lower limb disabilities. Cranking refers to pushing a wheelchair, using your hands to do anything. And we encourage these individuals because they are such a marginalized part of society, especially in a developing country like China, that we had the idea to give this community the opportunities that maybe exist in more developed countries, but are just starting to emerge in countries like China and other developing countries. It's in this way that I think these people who can form the future and influence the change that we see going on in China right now can engage with society, become more mainstream, and actually change concepts and eliminate preconceptions of different people. Those differences can range from disability, which is what I focus on. They can reach out to religion. They can extend to different cultures, different backgrounds, family backgrounds, and provide the world a chance to really reconsider where I stand and learn where other people come from. As I said, I think my youth was influenced by China. I just made it into, I think, the under 45 category. But I'm happy to be here today because I really think that the young people of today have an even greater opportunity to interact, to exchange, and to push change forward. So in closing, I'd like to congratulate the Young Leaders Dialogue Program and CCG, and thank you for putting this together, as well as all of the experienced, not so young individuals on whom we rely for your experience, for your knowledge, and for all of the things that you can teach us going forward. So thank you, and I wish everyone a very bright future and a very happy afternoon.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Thank you for what you have done. Greatly appreciate it. 那我也要在这里向大家预告一下，我们青年领袖对话项目呢，12月16号，也就是明天要举行首场研讨会，大家可能很快就会在我身后大屏幕看到。研讨会的主题是国际青年领袖减贫创新交流分论坛，也欢迎大家持续的关注。我们有2场分论坛分别是在下午和晚上。那最后呢，我想请大家用最热烈的掌声，再次祝贺国际青年领袖对话项目的成功启动。Now, I would like to invite all of you to put your hands together to really congratulate the launch of this Young Leaders Dialogue program. And thank you all so very much. 再次感谢各位领导、各位来宾、各位使节，谢谢大家。希望我们下次再见。